welcome to the FanDuel quarterback analysis for week 2. I'm Jason Gilbo, JGilbo11. With me is Spencer Limbach at Spencer_JL. Taking a look at cash game, GPP value quarterbacks. You and I are pretty much kind of on the same grouping here. And we'll get right into it. I mean, cash games, Eli Manning is Matthew Stafford's your first one here.
Right, and it's kind of funny if you look at the article that I just wrote on the Daily Fantasy Cafe homepage. I spent the introduction preaching on how not to overreact to week 1, yet the first quarterback I mentioned is one of the best ones that really impressed in week 1. So it kind of looks like I'm overreacting to that, but I don't really think so. I mean, there's a lot of other things going on here that lead me to believe that Stafford is going to have another solid week yet again. And the first of that is the matchup. I mean, if you look at the optimizer right now, the Titans have the 6th best pass defense. But that's after 1 week, and they played against the Vikings last week in Sean Hill, where they really didn't even have to throw the ball. So obviously that's skewed. It's going to be skewed early in the season, so you have to really be aware of that. But the Titans, according to Pro Football Focus, they rank 24th in secondary from pure talent level, according to player grades by Pro Football Focus. So that's kind of what I'm leaning on earlier in the season is just where overall talent lies. And as we know, last season the Titans got torched in the secondary. They're a very good matchup for quarterback wide receiver combinations. And then another reason going for Stafford, the price is very attainable here. He's not in the upper tier. Guys like Rodgers, Cam Newton are over $9,000. Stafford kind of mid-range at the $7,800. Won't break the bank on FanDuel there. And then the last and final point, probably the best point to make about Stafford, is just how this offense is built around him. I mean, they're a pass-heavy offense, and even their running plays are extensions of the passing games. I mean, they like to get Theo Riddick, Amir Abdullah, Eric Ebron involved in the short passes, screens, swing passes, and that's basically their running game. They don't hand the ball off. So, I mean, Stafford's going to get fantasy points there, even for their extended rushing game. So, add it all up, and I think he's an awesome play for all formats.
Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement. I mean, 7,800 is a real bargain for Stafford in this matchup. High team total, one of the highest on the board this week. Another one that you're taking a look at is Eli Manning. For me, I'm in agreement. I mean, it's between these two in terms of cash games. I do like Stafford, probably a little bit more, but Eli, a little bit higher price, just 300 more, but in a great spot as well.
Right, and he's going up against the Saints, and I mean, the past few seasons, I think 3 seasons overall, the Saints have had one of the worst pass defenses in the league, and that really doesn't look to change that much this year. When you look at Derek Carr just throwing all over them, that comeback victory on the road in New Orleans last week, that's kind of the same old Saints defense that we've been seeing for the past few years. And if you remember, Eli Manning, Drew Brees went toe-to-toe last season. Eli threw for 350 yards, 6 touchdowns. I believe Brees outdueled him, had 7 touchdowns in the win that game. So there's always potential for a shootout. Anytime these two teams get together, 2 pass-heavy offenses, you have to really like the pace, the game flow coming into this matchup. And the Giants are at home, so I mean that really bodes well for Eli playing in a little friendlier environment there. He should be a little more relaxed. Kind of fell victim to that game flow last week in Dallas as the Cowboys were trying to run the ball, chew the clock, just eat up time of possession. But otherwise, Manning had a pretty efficient game, threw pretty well against that secondary, except for when he was just throwing straight to the Dallas cornerbacks. Obviously, give him a pass on that one because, I mean, that really wasn't representative of his body of work at large. But I really like Eli in this total. It's hard not to like anyone against the Saints, especially Eli, who's chucking the ball all over the place this week. Pair him with Odell Beckham, maybe Victor Cruz, Sterling Shepard, throw them in as a wide receiver 3 play if you're feeling really lucky about it. But otherwise, you can just roll with Eli solo as well.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that. It's kind of hard to go away from those 2 guys. In terms of GPP, you talked about Kirk Cousins. I like this because it's kind of a really big swerve off of those 2 names, and he's going to be pretty low owned.
Yeah, I think he's going to be very low owned. I mean, we had that Monday Night Football game against the Steelers, prime time. Everyone was watching that game, and everyone watched him struggle. So, I mean, he'll have a very low ownership percentage just because of that. And this Cowboys secondary, they're not as good as they get credit for. I mean, the pass numbers overall, their total yardage allowed over the past few seasons has been kind of suppressed by Dallas playing keep away and really eating up the clock with that running game. So as far as efficiency goes overall, Dallas has a bottom 10 secondary, and I think Kirk Cousins can really get to them. You have to also like that this is the home game for Washington, and we know those enormous road home splits for Kirk Cousins, almost Drew Brees-like in that category where you're targeting him at home and pretty much home only. Last season, pretty much the same secondary for Dallas. Kirk Cousins had a lot of success, 395 yards, 4 touchdowns total over those 2 games. Very efficient stat lines as well. So, I mean, you kind of have to really like all those external factors and put week 1 behind you. Thinking Kirk Cousins shapes up as a pretty good play here. Obviously, game flow is a little bit concerning, as I just said, what happened to Eli Manning. But, I mean, there is a chance Cousins could break out here.
Yeah, definitely. If you look at Washington, I mean, if they can get out to a lead, I think that helps them as well. Last week, as you mentioned, it was a little bit different. Blake Bortle's your next guy here, 8,100. This one I like quite a bit. I think this is one of my favorite GPP plays of week 2. Obviously, a Chargers secondary that I think is pretty average. Obviously, you have Jason Verrett, who is a good corner, going to be on Allen Robinson, but a lot of secondary pieces there for Bortles to really target.
Right, and I mean, this really has potential for a shootout here. I know the team total isn't as high as guys like Eli Manning, Matthew Stafford have, but that's also why he's going to fly under the radar. Talking about Bortles here, Phillip Rivers loves to chuck it in San Diego. Doesn't have Keenan Allen there, but he'll still get his running backs, tight ends involved. So, I mean, you could see a lot of pass attempts from both sides of the ball, both just trying to exchange scores, play keep up here. And another great rationale for Bortles always, I mean, even though he plays for a bad team, sometimes to his demise, that's actually kind of good for a fantasy quarterback if you really think about it, because he's playing catch-up all the time, a lot of pass attempts, some garbage time touchdowns. And, I mean, that just really speaks to his rationale. The price is not cheap. That's one of the reasons why he'll be under-owned, 8,100 here, where you can get Eli at the same price or Stafford for cheaper. But he's a really nice pivot off those 2 guys. He could really outperform them too. I really don't see that as inconceivable this upcoming week.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I think, as you mentioned, that Vegas total, I think, is a little bit deceiving for what I'm expecting and you're expecting to kind of happen here. So I think that's going to lower the ownership amongst kind of the pricing. In terms of value here, you talk about Josh McCown, 6,000 here on FanDuel going up against the Ravens secondary. As you put, kind of week 1's a little bit, more as how the Bills are in comparison to how they actually played.
Right. The Bills really got out of the game plan last week. Sammy Watkins got hurt. That foot was giving him some issues. So he really didn't stretch the field, and the whole thing just kind of collapsed on the Bills, where they really didn't have a deep ball presence, and the Ravens were just able to kind of press against the line and defend 10-yard out routes and keep the Bills from moving the ball that way. So you look at the Ravens ranked number 2 in pass defense at this point in the season, kind of throw it out the window. I'm going off of talent mostly, where Pro Football Focus ranks them 24th overall as a secondary unit. That's definitely something to exploit as the season goes along. Josh McCown was actually really good against the Ravens last year at some of his best games. As I said, he started, I think, was it 6 or 7 games last season, and his 2 best games were against the Ravens, combined for 669 yards, 4 total touchdowns, including a rushing touchdown against the Ravens last season. So you kind of like where he's at, that he's been there before. He has that confidence. He has familiarity with some of the weapons there in Cleveland, namely Gary Barnidge, who will also be lower owned this upcoming week. That's a discussion for a different article, of course. But, I mean, as a tournament play goes, a cheap pick that can really open up your salary cap, I don't hate Josh McCown. I mean, obviously, there's a low floor there. I mean, you have to address the elephant in the room where he could go out and have 8 fantasy points and just make you look stupid. But that's why you're risking him only in tournaments, only for a couple lineups when you're building multiple lineups on FanDuel. but he's cheap. He has upside. He's been there before against this defense that's really kind of overrated at this point in the season. So I think he'll have lower ownership, and he's kind of a sneaky pick here.
Yeah, I definitely think so as well. I mean, definitely a different situation from where Dak was at in week one. One, we know what McCown can do, so we've seen the sample. We were talking kind of before we hopped on about, there are a couple expensive options, but the theme here has been kind of sitting in that mid-range, and I'm in agreement. I think that's where we're going to be landing.
Right. You can make a case for Cam Newton. You can make a case for Aaron Rodgers, but the matchups just aren't where you like to see them when you're paying that much. So I'm sticking in the mid-range for these guys as they follow.
Yep, I definitely agree with you. So that's going to wrap things up with the FanDuel quarterback analysis. Be sure to check out DailyFantasyCafe.com for all the great tools and content.